The plasma bolt missed Danny Carter's head by inches, scorching the metal wall behind him. He dove behind the cargo crate, heart hammering against his ribs, as another volley of energy weapons lit up the abandoned station corridor. The 3 hatchlings in his arms squeaked in terror, their translucent scales shimmering with fear. Danny pressed them closer to his chest, feeling their rapid heartbeats against his own. The Red Dragon Pack had found him. Danny had stumbled onto the hatchlings 2 days ago while scavenging the derelict research station orbiting Kepler. 442B. They were alone, chirping weakly in a containment pod, clearly abandoned during whatever chaos had emptied this place. He couldn't just leave them. Now, crouched in the darkness, with weapons fire tearing through the station, he wondered if compassion was going to get him killed. A guttural roar echoed through the corridor. The dragons were close, their heavy footfalls reverberating through the deck plates. Danny knew their reputation. The Red Dragon Pack were apex predators from the Draconid cluster, mercenaries who took contracts no one else would touch. They stood 8 feet tall, covered in crimson scales harder than military-grade armor, with claws that could tear through starship hulls. Humans called them dragons because the resemblance was uncanny, though these creatures were far more terrifying than any Earth legend. Danny checked his salvaged pulse rifle. 3 shots left. Against a full hunting pack, he might as well throw rocks. The hatchlings nuzzled deeper into his jacket, their tiny claws gripping the fabric. They couldn't be more than a few weeks old, barely the size of house cats. Their eyes, large and golden, stared up at him with absolute trust. Danny felt something twist in his chest. These weren't monsters. They were just babies. Another plasma bolt exploded near his position, showering him with sparks and molten metal. Danny bolted from cover, sprinting down the corridor with the hatchlings clutched against him. His boots pounded against the deck as he ran, lungs burning, legs screaming. Behind him, the roars grew louder. They were hunting him like prey, and they were gaining ground. He burst through a doorway into what looked like a residential section. Bunks lined the walls, personal effects still scattered around as if the occupants had vanished mid-shift. Danny scanned desperately for options. No weapons. No exit. No way out. The footsteps stopped. Danny froze, pressing his back against the wall. The hatchlings had gone silent, instinctively understanding the danger. He could hear breathing now, deep and rhythmic, just beyond the doorway, multiple sources. The pack had him surrounded. A massive clawed hand gripped the doorframe. Slowly, deliberately, a red dragon stepped into the room. The creature's head nearly touched the ceiling, its scales gleaming like fresh blood under the emergency lighting. Yellow eyes fixed on Danny with predatory focus. Then another dragon entered. And another. 5 in total. Each one a killing machine designed by evolution and enhanced by their warrior culture. The lead dragon's lips pulled back, revealing rows of serrated teeth. It spoke in a voice like grinding stone, the words translated by Danny's implant into perfect English. "Give us the hatchlings, human. This does not concern you." Danny's grip tightened on the babies. They trembled against him, and he felt their tiny hearts racing. "Can't do that." The dragon's eyes narrowed. "You do not understand what you protect. Those are not pets. They are Draconid offspring. They belong to us. They belong to themselves." Danny shot back, knowing he sounded insane. "And right now they're terrified. So no, you're not taking them." The dragons exchanged glances, communicating in clicks and growls that Danny's implant couldn't translate. The lead warrior took a step forward, claws extended. "Humanity's foolish compassion will be your extinction. Step aside or die." Danny raised his pulse rifle with his free hand, a laughable gesture given the odds. "Then I guess I die." The dragon's roar shook the room as it lunged forward, and Danny knew his next breath might be his last. Time seemed to slow as the massive predator closed the distance between them. Danny squeezed the trigger, the pulse rifle bucking in his hand. The shot caught the lead dragon in the shoulder, barely slowing it down. The creature's claws swept toward him in a killing arc, and Danny twisted sideways, feeling the razor-sharp talons whisper past his ribs by millimeters. He fired again, the second shot going wild as he stumbled backward over scattered debris. The hatchlings shrieked, their high-pitched cries cutting through the chaos. The sound made every dragon in the room freeze mid-motion. The lead warrior stopped its advance, head tilting as if listening to something beyond human hearing. The other pack members stood rigid, their aggressive posture suddenly uncertain. Danny didn't waste the moment. He rolled behind an overturned table, his last shot chambered and ready. His mind raced through possibilities, each one ending with him torn apart. The hatchlings were making soft cooing sounds now, pressing their snouts against his chest as if trying to burrow inside his jacket for safety. Their trust in him was absolute, and that trust was going to get them all killed. The lead dragon lowered into a crouch, its massive form somehow becoming even more menacing. "You have no idea what you've done, human. Those hatchlings are from the Crimson Brood, stolen 3 cycles ago by pirates who raided our nursery world. We have hunted across 17 systems to find them. Their parents have torn apart colonies and fleets in their grief and rage. Entire stations have been reduced to debris because of these lost children." Danny's blood ran cold. He looked down at the tiny creatures in his arms, seeing them with new understanding. These weren't just any hatchlings. They were the children of something far more dangerous than the warriors surrounding him. Then why are they here? Why were they abandoned in a research station? A different dragon spoke, its voice carrying less hostility. The pirates who took them attempted to study draconid biology. They wanted to create weapons from our genetic code. When our fleet tracked them here, they fled, leaving everything behind, including the hatchlings. We arrived too late. The station was already abandoned. We have been searching every section for days. Danny processed this information, his pulse rifle still aimed, but his resolve wavering. The hatchlings chirped again, their tiny claws kneading against his chest like kittens. One of them licked his chin with a tongue no bigger than a fingernail. Despite everything, despite the danger and the impossibility of the situation, Danny felt an overwhelming protective instinct surge through him. "How do I know you're not lying?" he asked. "How do I know you're not the ones who hurt them?" The lead dragon's expression shifted, and for the first time Danny saw something other than predatory intent in those yellow eyes. It was pain, raw and ancient. "Because we are their family. I am First Claw Kethra, bonded guardian of the Crimson Brood. These hatchlings are my brother's children. When they were taken, he destroyed 3 moons in his fury before collapsing from grief. His mate has not spoken since the day they vanished. Every warrior in this pack is blood-sworn to their return." The other dragons lowered their weapons slightly, a gesture Danny recognized as significant. One of them, smaller than the others with darker scales, stepped forward. "I am Scarix, clutch sister to the hatchling's mother. Please, human, we mean them no harm. We only wish to bring them home." Danny's mind reeled. Everything about this situation contradicted everything he knew about the Red Dragon Pack. They were supposed to be ruthless mercenaries, cold-blooded killers who showed no mercy. But the emotion in their voices, the careful way they held themselves despite their obvious advantage, spoke to something deeper. The hatchling on his chest lifted its head, golden eyes focusing on the dragons across the room. It made a questioning trill, then a louder chirp. The other 2 hatchlings joined in, their voices creating a strange harmony. Danny felt them shift in his arms, no longer trembling but alert, almost eager. Kethra's entire body language changed. The warrior's scales rippled with color, shifting from blood red to warmer orange hues. "They remember," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "They remember the brood song." The hatchlings were squirming now, pushing against Danny's grip, but not frantically. They wanted to see, to respond to something instinctive and primal. Danny made a decision that probably marked him as the stupidest human in the galaxy. Slowly, carefully, he stood up from behind the overturned table. He kept his rifle lowered but ready, his entire body tensed for betrayal. "If you're lying, if you hurt them, I will spend the rest of my life making sure everyone in the galaxy knows the Red Dragon Pack preys on children," Danny said, his voice steady despite the terror coursing through his veins. Kethra inclined her massive head, a gesture of respect. If we intended harm, human, you would already be dead. Your courage in defending them has earned you honor. Among my people there is no greater deed than protecting the young, even at cost of one's own life. You were prepared to die for hatchlings not of your blood or species. That is the mark of true warrior spirit. Danny took a step forward, then another. The dragons remained motionless, letting him approach at his own pace. The hatchlings were trilling constantly now, their little bodies vibrating with excitement. When Danny was close enough to see his reflection in Kethra's scales, he stopped. "Show me," he said. "Show me they know you." Kethra slowly extended one massive clawed hand, palm up, in a gesture of offering. The lead hatchling immediately scrambled up Danny's chest, its tiny claws finding purchase on his collar. It leaned forward, sniffing the air, then launched itself in a clumsy glide toward the dragon's hand. The moment it landed, Kethra's entire demeanor transformed. The fearsome warrior cradled the tiny creature with a gentleness that seemed impossible for something so large and dangerous. The hatchling nuzzled against her scales, purring like a tiny engine. The other dragons moved closer, and Danny felt hands gently lifting the remaining hatchlings from his arms. He let them go, watching as each warrior held the babies with reverent care. Skark was openly weeping, her tears leaving steaming tracks down her scaled face. The hatchlings climbed over their rescuers, chirping and purring, clearly recognizing something in these massive predators that spoke to their deepest instincts. Danny lowered his rifle completely, suddenly feeling the weight of the last 48 hours crash over him. His legs went weak, and he sat down hard on the deck. The adrenaline that had kept him moving drained away, leaving him shaking and exhausted. Kethra approached him, still cradling one hatchling against her chest. "You are Danny Carter, yes? The salvager registered to the ship Wanderer's Hope?" Danny nodded, too tired to wonder how she knew his name. "Yeah, that's me. Just a salvager trying to make a living picking through abandoned stations." "You are far more than that." Kethra crouched down, bringing her massive frame closer to his eye level. "You found these hatchlings and chose to care for them. You fed them, sheltered them, and when we came you stood against us, knowing you could not win. These are not the actions of a simple salvager." "I just did what anyone would do," Danny muttered. "No." The dragon's voice was firm. Most beings would have left them or sold them to the highest bidder. Draconid hatchlings are worth fortunes on the black market, yet you protected them as if they were your own young. This creates a debt that my people do not take lightly." Danny looked up at the warrior, confusion replacing exhaustion. "I don't want payment. I just wanted them safe." Kethra's expression softened further, the orange hues in her scales deepening. "I understand, but among the Draconid, there are laws older than your species. You have become guardian brother to these hatchlings. They will remember your scent, your voice, your protection. When they are grown, they will seek you out. You are now part of their brood family, whether you wish it or not." The implications of that statement hit Danny like a physical blow. "Wait, what? I'm part of what?" Skark stepped forward, one hatchling perched on her shoulder. "You are broodkin. When the parents learn what you have done, they will honor you. Your name will be sung in the halls of our ancestral worlds. Your bloodline will be protected for generations. This is the way of our people." Danny's head spun. He'd gone from salvager to apparently being adopted into an alien warrior culture in the span of 10 minutes. "I don't know what to say." "Say nothing," Kethra replied. "Actions speak louder than words, and your actions today have spoken volumes. But I must ask, how did you care for them? Draconid hatchlings require specific nutrients and temperatures to survive. Without proper care, they would have died within hours." Danny shrugged, feeling oddly self-conscious. "I figured it out mostly. They were cold when I found them, so I kept them warm against my body. My ship's environmental systems let me crank up the heat in my quarters. They were hungry, so I tried different protein sources for my supplies. Turned out they really liked the synthetic beef strips. They wouldn't sleep unless they were touching me, so I just let them sleep on my chest while I worked." The dragons exchanged meaningful looks. Kethra's voice held a note of wonder. You provided body heat, protein, and physical contact. These are the 3 pillars of hatchling care and Draconid culture. How did you know? I didn't, Danny admitted. I just treated them like I'd want to be treated if I was scared and alone. Kept them warm, fed, and safe. Scarix made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Compassion across species. This is rare in the galaxy. You have proven that humanity possesses something many races lack. Danny stood up slowly, his muscles protesting the movement. So what happens now? You take them back to their parents? Yes, Kethra confirmed. We have a ship in orbit. We will transport them immediately to the nursery world. Their parents must be informed that their children live. She paused, her golden eyes studying Danny intently. You should come with us. What? No, I can't just leave. I have a ship, contracts, responsibilities. Your ship will be brought along, Kethra said firmly. This is not a request, Danny Carter. The parents will wish to meet the one who saved their offspring. To refuse would be a grave insult to their honor and yours. Besides, the hatchlings will be distressed if you disappear without explanation. They have bonded to you. As if to emphasize the point, one of the hatchlings chirped loudly from Scarix's arms, its eyes fixed on Danny. It squirmed until the warrior lowered it to the deck. Then it scurried across the floor and climbed up Danny's leg, not stopping until it was pressed against his chest again. The tiny creature looked up at him and made a contented purring sound. Danny couldn't help but smile despite the insanity of the situation. He gently stroked the hatchling's head with one finger. I guess I don't have much choice, do I? None whatsoever, Kethra replied, but there was warmth in her tone. Welcome to the brood, guardian brother. Your life just became far more complicated. The Red Dragon Pack moved with military precision, sweeping through the abandoned station to ensure no threats remained before transporting everyone to their ship. Danny found himself surrounded by warriors who had been trying to kill him minutes ago, now treating him with cautious respect. The hatchlings rotated between their rescuers and Danny, unwilling to stay away from him for long. Every time one climbed onto his shoulder or nuzzled against his neck, the dragons watched with expressions that might have been approval. Their ship, a sleek Predator-class vessel called the Blood Oath, hung in orbit like a crimson knife against the stars. The interior was designed for beings twice Danny's size, forcing him to climb steps meant for much longer legs. The hatchlings found this hilarious chirping what Danny swore was laughter every time he struggled. Even the stern-faced dragons seemed amused, though they were too polite to comment. The command deck resembled something between a military bridge and a tribal throne room. Weapons stations lined the walls, but tapestries and carved bone decorations gave the space an organic, almost ceremonial feel. Kethra took position at what Danny assumed was the captain's chair, though it looked more like a throne designed for something with a tail. Navigator, set course for Draconid Prime, Kethra commanded. Maximum speed. Alert the Crimson Brood that their lost children return. A younger dragon at the navigation console nodded, his claws dancing across holographic controls. Course laid in, first claw. Estimated arrival in 6 cycles at current speed. 6 cycles. Danny did the mental math. About 4 days by human reckoning. 4 days to prepare for meeting the parents of the hatchlings he'd accidentally adopted. Parents who had destroyed moons in their grief. This was going to be interesting. Scarlix approached Danny. One hatchling cradled in each arm while the third perched on her head. Come, guardian brother. You look exhausted. We have prepared quarters for you. The hatchlings will need to feed and rest, and I suspect you need the same. Danny followed the dragon through corridors that seemed designed to intimidate. Everything was scaled for beings who could tear him apart without effort. Yet despite the alien environment, he felt oddly safe. The dragons moved around him with careful awareness, making sure not to accidentally knock him over or step on him. It was like being escorted by a group of very polite, very deadly giants. The quarters Scarix led him to were surprisingly comfortable once she adjusted the environmental controls. The temperature rose to something humans would consider warm but not unbearable. A raised platform served as a bed piled with what looked like soft furs or blankets. A console in the corner provided access to food synthesizers and entertainment systems. "This will be your space for the journey," Scarix explained, setting the hatchlings down on the bed platform. They immediately began exploring, their tiny claws making scratching sounds on the smooth surface. "The food synthesizer has been programmed with human nutritional requirements. If you need anything, simply speak aloud. The ship's intelligence will respond." Danny sank onto the platform, feeling the soft material give under his weight. "Thank you. I never expected any of this." Scarix settled into a sitting position, her tail curling around her legs. "You saved our family, Danny Carter. Among Draconid, family is everything. We are born into broods, raised communally, and sworn to protect our kin above all else. When the hatchlings were taken, it was as if part of our soul was ripped away. We have hunted for 3 cycles, following cold trails and dead leads. Many of us began to lose hope." One of the hatchlings climbed into Danny's lap, curling up into a tight ball. He automatically began stroking its back, feeling the warmth radiating from its scales. "What would have happened if I hadn't found them?" "They would have died," Scarix said bluntly. "Without proper care, without family, hatchlings do not survive. They are social creatures requiring constant contact and warmth. You provided what they needed, even without knowing our ways. That makes your actions even more significant. You responded with pure instinct and compassion." "I just couldn't leave them alone," Danny murmured, watching the hatchling in his lap begin to doze. They were so small and scared. Scarix's eyes gleamed with emotion. That simple act of kindness has changed everything. The war that would have consumed systems in revenge for their deaths will not happen. The parents can begin to heal. The brood can be whole again. You have given us back our future." The weight of those words settled on Danny's shoulders. He'd been so focused on immediate survival that he hadn't considered the larger implications. "You said there would have been a war?" "Absolutely," Scarix confirmed. "The father of these hatchlings is War Chief Thraxel, commander of the 3rd Fleet. The mother is High Priestess Kelara, spiritual leader of our people. When their children were stolen, Thraxel swore a blood oath to scour the galaxy clean of those responsible. Kelara entered the grief trance, calling upon ancient powers to curse the pirates who took them. If the hatchlings had died, nothing would have stopped them from fulfilling those oaths. Entire civilizations would have been caught in the crossfire." Danny felt sick. "That's why everyone was so scared when I said I had them. Yes, we needed to retrieve them quickly and carefully. Your resistance complicated matters, but it also proved your worthiness. A lesser being would have surrendered immediately. You stood your ground knowing you would die. That is the behavior of true broodkin." The other 2 hatchlings joined their sibling in Danny's lap, creating a warm, purring pile of scales and tiny claws. Despite everything, despite the insanity and the danger and the complete upending of his life, Danny felt a sense of rightness. These little creatures trusted him completely, and he would die before betraying that trust. "What will the parents be like?" Danny asked quietly. Scarix considered the question carefully. "Thraxel is a warrior without equal. He has led our fleets to victory in 100 battles. His tactical genius is legendary, but so is his capacity for violence. He will test you, push you, try to determine if you are worthy of the honor you've been given. Do not show fear. He respects courage above all else." "And the mother?" "Kelara is both gentle and terrifying. She speaks with the voice of our ancestors, channels the power of generations past. She will see into your soul, Danny Carter. She will know your truth, your intentions, your heart. You cannot lie to her, so do not try. Be honest, be humble, and you will earn her respect." Danny swallowed hard. "This sounds like it's going to be intense." "It will be the most important meeting of your life," Scarix agreed. "But you have already proven yourself. You saved their children when no one else could. That counts for more than you realize." She stood, her massive frame unfolding with predatory grace. "Rest now. The journey will be long, and you need to recover your strength. The hatchlings will stay with you. They refuse to be separated from you for long. As if responding to her words, all three hatchlings burrowed deeper against Danny, their purring creating a soothing vibration. Danny couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this tired. The adrenaline crash was hitting hard, and his body was demanding rest. "Thank you, Scarikix," he managed to say before exhaustion pulled him under. The dragon paused at the doorway. "No, Danny Carter. Thank you. You have given us back something more precious than all the wealth in the galaxy. Sleep well, guardian brother." The lights dimmed automatically as Danny drifted off. 3 tiny lives curled against his chest, their heartbeats synchronizing with his own. Danny woke to the sensation of something small and warm trying to crawl up his face. He opened his eyes to find one of the hatchlings perched on his forehead, golden eyes staring down at him with intense curiosity. The moment it realized he was awake, it chirped excitedly and launched itself onto his chest, joined immediately by its siblings. All 3 began what could only be described as a happy dance, their tiny claws pattering against his shirt while they sang their morning greeting. Okay, I'm up," Danny laughed, sitting upright and letting the hatchling settle into his lap. His body ached from the previous day's ordeal, but he felt more rested than he had in weeks. The quarters were comfortable, the temperature perfect, and for the first time in years he'd slept without worrying about hull breaches or equipment failures. The door chimed, a melodic sound unlike anything Danny had heard before. "Come in," he called, and the panel slid open to reveal Kethra carrying what looked like a tray of food. "Guardian brother," she greeted formally, then smiled at the sight of the hatchlings climbing over Danny like he was a jungle gym. "I see they have chosen their wake-up method. My apologies. They are relentless in the mornings. It's actually kind of nice," Danny admitted, gently extracting a hatchling from his hair. "Better than my usual alarm system. What have you got there?" Kethra set the tray down on a nearby surface. "Nutrition for both you and the young ones. We have synthesized what we believe approximates human breakfast foods, though I cannot guarantee authenticity. The hatchlings require a protein slurry that promotes scale development." Danny examined the tray. The human food looked reasonably appetizing. Some kind of protein bars and what might have been scrambled eggs. The hatchling food was a thick, greenish paste in 3 small bowls. "Do I just let them eat on their own?" "They will need assistance," Kethra explained, settling onto the floor with more grace than something her size should possess. "Hatchlings at this age cannot feed themselves efficiently. Watch." She picked up one bowl and dipped a claw into the paste. The nearest hatchling immediately opened its mouth, revealing rows of tiny teeth. Kethra carefully placed a small amount of paste on its tongue, and the creature's eyes closed in obvious pleasure as it swallowed. "You see, they require hand-feeding until their coordination improves." Danny took another bowl and mimicked Kethra's technique. The hatchling in his lap eagerly accepted the food, purring between swallows. It was oddly intimate, this act of feeding, and Danny understood better why the dragons considered him part of the family. He'd been doing this for 2 days, not understanding the significance. "How are they doing?" Danny asked between feedings. "Health-wise, I mean." "Better than expected," Kethra replied. "Our ship's medical officer examined them while you slept. They are slightly underweight and show signs of stress, but nothing permanent. Your care prevented serious harm. They will recover fully." "That's a relief." Danny felt tension. He didn't know he was carrying release from his shoulders. "I was worried I'd done something wrong. On the contrary, you did everything right." The medical officer was astonished that a human with no knowledge of our species managed to provide adequate care. "He has asked permission to interview you about your methods." Danny snorted. "My method was mostly panic and guesswork." "Sometimes that is the best method," Kethra said, a hint of humor in her voice. "Overthinking can lead to paralysis. You acted on instinct, and instinct saved their lives. They fed the hatchlings in comfortable silence, the little creatures growing more animated with each mouthful. When they finished, all 3 immediately became drowsy, their bellies full and bodies warm. Danny let them curl up against him, marveling at how quickly they fell asleep. "They trust you completely," Kethra observed. "That is remarkable." Draconid young are instinctively wary of other species. Even among our own kind, it takes time to build such trust. Yet with you, they showed no fear from the beginning. Maybe they were too scared of everything else to worry about me, Danny suggested. Perhaps. Or perhaps they sense something in you that transcends species barriers. Kethra stood, towering over Danny even in a relaxed posture. I must return to command. We have received communications from Draconid Prime. Word of the Hatchlings' discovery has spread quickly. The Crimson Brood is preparing a reception. Danny felt his stomach drop. A reception? Like a ceremony? More than a ceremony? An event. The return of lost children is cause for celebration among all Draconid. There will be feasting, singing, ritual combat displays. And you, Guardian Brother, will be at the center of it all. I really don't need to be the center of anything, Danny protested weakly. Kethra's expression grew serious. You do not have a choice in this matter. The parents have already declared their intention to honor you publicly. To refuse would insult them gravely. You must accept this with grace. Danny looked down at the sleeping hatchlings. Their tiny forms rose and fell with each breath, completely vulnerable, completely trusting. He put himself in danger for them without thinking, and now he had to face the consequences. Fine. I'll do whatever is necessary. But I have no idea how to act around Draconid nobility. You act as yourself, Kethra advised. Authenticity is valued above all else. Do not try to be something you are not. The parents will see through any deception instantly. She moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. Thraxel has requested to speak with you before we arrive. He wishes to understand the human who saved his children. Danny's heart rate spiked. When? Soon. Perhaps within the next few hours. Prepare yourself, Guardian Brother. This conversation will determine much. After Kethra left, Danny sat with the sleeping hatchlings and tried to process everything. His life had been simple 72 hours ago. Salvage runs, equipment repairs, staying ahead of creditors. Now he was hurtling through space toward a planet full of dragon warriors, about to meet parents who could destroy moons in their anger. All because he couldn't leave 3 babies to die alone. He wouldn't change a thing. The communication came faster than Danny expected. He was attempting to clean himself up, using the quarter's sonic shower and trying to make his salvager's coveralls look presentable, when Scarrick appeared at his door. The war chief will speak with you now, she announced. Come, the hatchlings will be cared for while you are occupied. Danny followed her through the ship's corridors, his pulse thundering in his ears. Other dragons paused in their duties to watch him pass, their expressions unreadable. The ship felt different than before, charged with anticipation. Everyone knew what was happening. Scarriggs led him to a smaller chamber filled with holographic equipment. Stand in the center, she instructed. The war chief will appear as a projection, but treat it as if he is truly present. Show respect, but do not grovel. Thraxel despises weakness. Danny nodded, his mouth too dry to speak. Scarriggs activated the equipment and stepped back. The air shimmered, and suddenly Danny was no longer alone in the room. The hologram that materialized was absolutely massive, even larger than Kethra. Thraxel stood at least 9 feet tall, his scales so dark red they were almost black. Scars covered his body, each one a testament to battles survived. His eyes burned with an intensity that made Danny want to step back, but he held his ground. This was the being who had destroyed moons. This was a father who had torn through the galaxy, searching for his lost children. You are Danny Carter. The war chief's voice was like an avalanche, deep and overwhelming. It wasn't a question. Yes, war chief, Danny replied, keeping his voice steady through sheer force of will. Thraxel studied him with the focus of a predator evaluating prey. Long seconds passed in silence. Danny refused to look away, meeting those burning eyes despite every survival instinct screaming at him to run. My children live because of you. They were in trouble. I helped. That's all. That is not all. Thraxel moved closer, the hologram so realistic Danny could almost feel the heat radiating from the massive body. You risked your life. You stood against trained warriors, knowing you would die. You cared for offspring not of your blood, your species, or your world. Tell me why. Danny thought about lying, about giving some noble answer that would make him sound heroic. But Kethra's words echoed in his mind, authenticity above all else. Because they were scared and alone. Because I know what that feels like. Because leaving them would have made me someone I couldn't live with being. The war chief's expression shifted. Something that might have been respect flickering across his scarred features. You speak truth. I can hear it in your voice. You did not save them for reward or recognition. You saved them because it was right. Anyone would have done the same. No. Thraxel's voice hardened. We encountered 17 beings in our search. Merchants, scavengers, station personnel. We showed them images of the hatchlings, offered vast rewards for information. Most ignored us. Some lied. One attempted to sell us false coordinates. Not one offered genuine help without demanding payment first. You are the only being who acted without thought of personal gain? Danny shifted uncomfortably. I just did what needed doing, which is why you are worthy. Thraxel straightened to his full height. Danny Carter, I owe you a debt that cannot be repaid. My children are my legacy, my future the continuation of my bloodline. Without them, I am nothing. You return meaning to my existence. For this, you have my eternal gratitude and the protection of my fleet. I don't need protection, War Chief. I just need to know they're safe and happy. Thraxel made a sound that might have been a laugh. You continue to surprise me, human. Very well. You will see for yourself that they are safe when we reach Draconid Prime. But understand this clearly. You are now broodkin. My children will remember you always. When they are grown, they will seek you out. They will bring you into their lives, their battles, their triumphs. You cannot escape this bond, nor should you try. It is a great honor. I understand, Danny said, though he wasn't sure he truly did. I hope so. The war chief's eyes narrowed. My mate Kalara will wish to meet you as well. She is less concerned with warrior codes and more interested in the heart behind actions. She will test you in ways I cannot. Be prepared for that. I'll do my best. That is all anyone can ask. The Thraxel's image began to fade. We will speak again soon, Danny Carter. Until then, know that you have the respect of War Chief Thraxel and all who serve under my command. The hologram vanished, leaving Danny alone in the chamber. He realized his hands were shaking. Skarik appeared at his side, her presence somehow comforting despite her size. You did well, she said softly. The war chief was impressed. That is not easily accomplished. I was terrified, Danny admitted, as you should have been. Fear in the presence of greatness is wisdom, not weakness. But you did not let fear control you. That is what matters. She gestured toward the door. Come, the hatchlings have been asking for you. Their chirps have grown quite insistent. Danny followed her back through the corridors, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. He'd gone from salvager to broodkin, from anonymous to honored. His life would never be simple again. But when he entered his quarters and 3 tiny hatchlings immediately scrambled toward him, chirping with joy at his return, Danny knew he wouldn't trade this for anything. The next 3 days passed in a strange routine. Danny spent his time caring for the hatchlings, learning more about Draconid culture from Scarix and other crew members and trying to prepare himself for whatever awaited on Draconid Prime. The hatchlings grew stronger each day, their movements more coordinated, their chirps more complex. They were learning to communicate, developing personalities that became more distinct with each passing hour. The smallest one, which Danny privately nicknamed Pip, was cautious and thoughtful. It would observe situations carefully before acting, always considering the safest approach. The middle child, who Danny called Striker because of its tendency to pounce on anything that moved, was bold and adventurous. The largest, whom Danny named Ember for the way its scales glowed when happy, was gentle and affectionate, always the first to seek comfort, and the last to leave Danny's side. The dragons found his naming convention amusing but didn't object. They will choose their true names when they come of age, Kethra explained. Until then, your designations serve well enough. On the fourth day, the Blood Oath dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and Draconid Prime filled the view screens. Danny stood on the command deck, hatchlings draped over his shoulders and arms, and stared at the planet that would change everything. It was beautiful in a fierce way. Red continents dominated by mountain ranges and volcanic activity. Oceans that shimmered with bioluminescent life. Cities that looked like they'd been carved from the bones of the planet itself. All spires and sweeping architecture that complemented rather than dominated the landscape. "Home," Scarlix breathed beside him. "I never thought I would see it again with these three." "It's incredible," Danny murmured. "It is the heart of our civilization," Kethra said from her command throne. "And today, it celebrates the return of lost children. Look." She gestured to the view screen, and Danny saw dozens of ships in orbit. No, hundreds. Vessels of every size and configuration, all bearing the crimson and gold colors of the Draconid fleets. They were forming up in ceremonial patterns, creating a corridor of honor for the Blood Oath to pass through. "This is all for them?" Danny asked, stunned. "This is for family," Kethra replied. "Every ship you see represents a brood, a clan, a lineage. They have come to witness the return of the Crimson Brood's children. This is our way." The Blood Oath descended through the honor corridor, other ships firing their weapons in salute as they passed. It was simultaneously terrifying and magnificent, a display of military power transformed into celebration. Danny felt the hatchlings press closer to him, overwhelmed by the attention but not frightened. They were home, and some part of them knew it. The landing site was a massive platform carved into the side of a mountain. As the ship settled onto the surface, Danny could see crowds gathering, thousands of Draconid, all waiting, all watching. His stomach twisted into knots. "Are you ready?" Scarrick asked gently. "No," Danny answered honestly. "But that doesn't matter, does it?" "No, it does not." She placed a clawed hand on his shoulder, careful not to disturb the hatchlings. "Remember, you are broodkin now. Act with the honor that title demands." The ship's boarding ramp lowered, and Kethra led the way out. The Red Dragon Pack followed in formation, with Danny and the hatchlings in the center of the protective circle. As they emerged into the light of Draconid Prime's sun, the crowd erupted into a sound that defied description. It was part roar, part song, part celebration. The noise was overwhelming, but the hatchlings seemed to thrive on it, their own chirps adding to the chorus. At the base of the ramp stood two figures that made everyone else seem small by comparison. War Chief Thraxel was even more imposing in person, his scarred scales gleaming like polished obsidian. Beside him stood a female dragon of ethereal grace, her scales shading from deep crimson to brilliant gold. Her eyes held ancient wisdom and immediate pain. High Priestess Kellara, the parents of the children Danny had saved. Kethra stopped a respectful distance away and bowed deeply. The Red Dragon Pack followed suit. Danny, unsure of protocol, simply stood still and tried not to pass out from anxiety. Thraxel's eyes locked onto the hatchlings, and his expression crumbled. The fierce warrior who had destroyed moons made a sound that was purely parental, raw with emotion and relief. Kellara moved first, crossing the distance between them with surprising speed. She stopped directly in front of Danny, towering over him, and he saw tears streaming down her scaled face. "My children," she whispered, her voice like music and thunder combined. "My babies." The hatchlings recognized her instantly. Stryker launched from Danny's shoulder in a gliding leap, landing in Kellara's outstretched hands. Pip and Ember followed, scrambling over Danny in their eagerness to reach their mother. The High Priestess gathered them against her chest, and her entire body began to glow with an inner light. She was singing in a language Danny's implant couldn't translate, but he understood it anyway. It was the sound of a mother reunited with her children, of grief ending and joy beginning. Thraxel joined his mate, his massive hands gentle as he touched each hatchling in turn. They chirped and purred, climbing over their parents with abandon. The war chief's eyes met Danny's over the hatchlings' heads, and Danny saw moisture there despite the fierce warrior's attempt to maintain composure. "You brought them back to us," Kellara said, finally looking at Danny directly. Her eyes saw through him, into him, just as Scarrick had warned. You carried them when they needed strength. You protected them when they needed safety. You loved them when they needed family. I just couldn't leave them, Danny managed to say. No, you could not. Kelara's expression softened further. Because you understand what it means to be alone. You understand loss. You understand the need for connection that transcends species and circumstance. I see your heart, Danny Carter, and it is beautiful. She extended one hand toward him while still cradling the hatchlings with the other. Danny hesitated, then placed his much smaller hand in hers. The contact sent a shock through his system, not painful but intense. He saw flashes of memory, of emotion, of connection. He understood in that moment that this was more than gratitude. This was soul-deep recognition between beings who operated on the same fundamental frequency. You are family now, Kelara declared, her voice carrying across the assembled crowd. Broodkin to the crimson lineage, under our protection, within our hearts, for all your days. The crowd erupted again, but this time Danny barely heard it. He was too focused on the three tiny faces peeking out from their parents' embrace, golden eyes still seeking him out despite being reunited with their true family. They hadn't forgotten him. They wouldn't forget him. Thraxel stepped forward, and for a terrifying moment Danny thought the war chief was going to crush him. Instead, the massive warrior knelt, bringing himself closer to Danny's eye level. You have given me back my purpose. You have restored my mate's soul. You have secured our future. Name your reward, Danny Carter. If it is within my power to grant, it is yours. Danny thought about wealth, about ships, about everything a simple salvager could want. Then he looked at the hatchlings and knew there was only one thing that mattered. Let me stay in their lives. Let me watch them grow. That's all I want. Thraxel's expression blazed with approval. Granted. You will always have a place among the Crimson Brood, but I insist on more. Your ship is outdated and barely functional. You will have a new vessel, state-of-the-art, equipped for any journey. You will have access to our trade networks, our resources, our knowledge, and you will have the protection of my fleet wherever you travel. That's too much, Danny protested. It is not nearly enough, Kelara corrected gently, but it is a beginning. Come, guardian brother, let us retire to somewhere more private. The hatchlings need rest, and we have much to discuss. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Danny was escorted to quarters within the Crimson Brood's ancestral complex, a sprawling structure that combined palace, temple, and fortress. The hatchlings refused to leave his side even as they reunited with extended family, chirping protests whenever he moved out of sight. Kelara found this both amusing and touching. They have bonded deeply to you, she observed as they sat in a private chamber overlooking the volcanic landscape. The hatchlings were finally sleeping, curled in a pile across both Danny and Kelara's laps. This will affect their development significantly. They will carry traits of both draconid and human influence as they mature. Is that a problem? Danny asked worriedly. On the contrary, it is a gift. They will have perspectives others lack. They will understand that family transcends biology. They will be bridge builders between species. Kelara stroked Ember's head gently. You have given them something precious beyond measure. Thraxel entered the chamber, his military bearing softened by domesticity. He carried a tray of food, setting it down within easy reach. I have dismissed the celebration for now. Tomorrow we will have formal ceremonies, but tonight should be for family. They ate together, and Danny learned what it meant to be part of a draconid brood. The conversation ranged from tactical discussions to spiritual philosophy to simple domestic concerns. Thraxel wanted to know everything about Danny's time with the hatchlings, asking questions with the focus of a military debriefing. Kelara was more interested in emotional impact and how the experience had changed Danny as a being. Through it all, the hatchlings slept peacefully, occasionally chirping in their dreams. Danny realized this was what he'd been missing his entire life. Not wealth or adventure or excitement, but this. Connection, belonging, family. As the planet's sun set, and bioluminescent stars emerged in the darkening sky, Kelara placed her hand over Danny's. "Thank you for bringing light back into our darkness. Thank you for showing us that goodness exists in unexpected places. Thank you for being exactly who you are." Danny felt tears prick his eyes. "Thank you for letting me be part of this." Thraxel raised a cup of some draconid beverage. To family, across all barriers. To guardian brother Danny Carter, who proved that the strongest bonds are forged in the fires of compassion. They drank together as stars filled the sky and 3 hatchlings dreamed of the future, safe in the knowledge that they were loved by parents and guardian brother alike. The celebration the next day was beyond anything Danny could have imagined. The entire city seemed to pulse with joy, as Draconid from across the planet gathered to witness the formal recognition ceremony. Danny wore clothing provided by Kelara. Ceremonial garments that somehow fit perfectly despite being designed for a species with completely different proportions. The fabric shifted colors in the light, showing crimson and gold patterns that identified him as Crimson Brood. The hatchlings now rested and fed, perched on various family members throughout the ceremony. They seemed to understand the importance of the event, remaining relatively calm despite the overwhelming sensory input. Pip stayed with Scarix, Stryker claimed a position on Kethra's shoulder, and Ember refused to leave Danny's arms. Thraxel stood before an assembled council of clan leaders and military commanders. His voice carried across the massive ceremonial hall without need for amplification. "We gather today to honor an extraordinary act of courage and compassion. Danny Carter, human salvager, found our lost children when we had nearly abandoned hope. He cared for them with no knowledge of our ways, no expectation of reward, no thought for his own safety. He stood against my finest warriors to protect them from perceived threat. He has earned the title of guardian brother through deed and heart." The crowd responded with a harmonious sound, voices blending in traditional songs of acceptance. Danny felt the weight of thousands of eyes upon him, but forced himself to stand tall. This was important to the family. He could endure discomfort for them. Kelara stepped forward, her ceremonial robes flowing like liquid fire. "I have looked into this human soul and found it pure. He acts from genuine care, not calculation. He seeks connection, not control. He values life above profit. These qualities align with our oldest traditions, our most sacred values. I declare Danny Carter to be broodkin, with all rights and responsibilities that title carries." She produced a crystalline blade, ornate and ancient. Danny's heart rate spiked as she approached, but Ember chirped reassuringly against his chest. Kelara raised the blade, and for a moment Danny thought this was some ritual combat he was supposed to participate in. Instead, she carefully cut a small lock of his hair. "This will be woven into the brood tapestry," she explained softly, "so that your presence in our family is recorded for all generations to come. Your name will be sung in our histories. Your descendants will know honor because of your actions today." Danny didn't have words for what he felt. The ceremony continued with various clan leaders offering gifts and pledges of support. Each one spoke of the importance of family, of the sacred duty to protect the young, of the significance of cross-species cooperation. By the end, Danny had been promised everything from trading rights to military escorts to educational opportunities he couldn't begin to comprehend. But the moment that mattered most came when Thraxel called the hatchlings forward. All 3 scrambled toward Danny, chirping excitedly. They climbed over him, their tiny claws finding purchase on his ceremonial clothing. Thraxel watched them with obvious affection. "My children know their guardian brother," he announced. "They will grow strong under the guidance of both Draconid tradition and human compassion. They will be exceptional because they have learned from exceptional example." The crowd erupted in celebration, and the formal ceremony dissolved into a massive feast. Danny found himself passed from group to group, each cluster of dragons wanting to meet the human who had saved the Crimson Brood's children. They asked questions about Earth, about human culture, about his life before this moment. He answered as honestly as he could, still reeling from the sheer scale of everything happening. Hours later, as the celebration continued around them, Danny found a quiet corner in one of the palace gardens. The hatchlings had fallen asleep in his lap again. exhausted from all the excitement. He sat beneath a tree with bioluminescent leaves, watching the play of light across their scales. Skyrex found him there. "Overwhelmed?" she asked, settling beside him with characteristic grace. "Completely," Danny admitted. "This morning I was a nobody. Now I'm apparently part of one of the most important families in Draconid civilization." "You were never a nobody," Skyrex corrected. "You simply had not yet found your place. Now you have." She gestured to the sleeping hatchlings. "They will need you in the years to come. Growing up Draconid is challenging. They will face trials, tests, expectations that push them to their limits. Having you as an anchor, someone who values them for who they are rather than what they might become, will be crucial." "I don't know if I can live up to those expectations." "You already have. Everything that follows is simply continuing what you have already begun." Skyrex looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "The universe is vast and often cruel. Finding genuine connection is rare. You gave these children connection when they needed it most. Now they will give it back to you throughout their lives. That is the way of family." Danny watched Pip shift in sleep, tiny claws flexing. "What happens now?" "I assume I can't stay here forever. I have a life, responsibilities." "You have a new ship waiting in orbit," Skyrex reminded him. Draxel meant what he said about state-of-the-art equipment. "You can continue your salvage work if you wish, though I suspect you will find more lucrative opportunities through Draconid trade networks. The hatchlings will remain here for now, learning from their parents and the brood. But you will visit often. And when they are old enough, they will visit you." "How old is old enough?" "A few cycles. Perhaps 3 or 4 by your reckoning. They mature quickly at first, then slow as they approach adolescence. By the time they are ready to explore beyond the homeworld, they will be formidable in their own right." Skyrex smiled. "And they will seek you out immediately. The bond you have formed does not weaken with distance or time." Stryker woke up long enough to chirp at Skyrex, then immediately went back to sleep. The warrior laughed softly. "Even in dreams they are demanding, just like their father." Kellara appeared from the garden path, her presence announced by a soft glow that preceded her. "There you are. I wondered where our guardian brother had gone." She sat on Danny's other side, creating a protective bracket around the sleeping hatchlings. "Are you well?" "Just processing," Danny said. "This is a lot to take in." "I imagine it is. Your life has changed completely in less than a week. That would unsettle anyone." Kellara placed one hand on Danny's shoulder, and he felt that same surge of connection as before. "But know this. You are not alone in navigating these changes. We are here to help you, to guide you, to support you, just as you supported our children." "Why me?" Danny asked the question that had been nagging at him. "Why did I find them? Why not someone better equipped to handle this?" "Because the universe works in mysterious ways," Kellara replied, her voice taking on a mystical quality. "I believe you were meant to find them. I believe your compassion called to their need. I believe some connections are forged by forces beyond our understanding." She smiled. "Or perhaps it was simply random chance that led to extraordinary outcome. Either way, the result is the same. You are family now." Draxel joined them, completing the circle. He looked down at the sleeping hatchlings with an expression of such pure love that Danny felt his throat tighten. "They sleep peacefully now. Before you brought them home, I had nightmares of finding them broken and alone. You banished those nightmares, Danny Carter. You gave me back the ability to dream of their future rather than mourn their loss." "I just wish I'd found them sooner," Danny said quietly. "You found them when they needed you most. That is what matters." Thraxel sat down, his large frame somehow folding into a comfortable position despite the limited space. "Now we must discuss practical matters. Your new ship is ready for inspection. It has been outfitted according to specifications Kethra provided, based on observations of your old vessel. We have also transferred your personal belongings and any salvage you had in storage. You brought my ship here? Of course. The Wanderer's hope may be outdated, but it served you well. It deserves respect. We have it in a maintenance facility being restored to full functionality. Consider it a backup vessel should you ever need it." Danny felt overwhelmed by the generosity. I don't know how to thank you. By living well, Kalara said simply. By continuing to be the person who saved our children. By staying connected to this family and these hatchlings as they grow. That is all the thanks we need. They sat together in the garden as night deepened and stars filled the sky. The hatchlings slept peacefully, occasionally chirping in their dreams. Danny realized he had found something he'd been searching for his entire life without knowing it. Not adventure or wealth or excitement, but this. Belonging. Purpose. Family. When Ember finally woke and immediately nuzzled against Danny's chest, purring contentedly, he knew his life would never be simple again. But simple was overrated. This, complicated and challenging and absolutely terrifying as it was, this was real, and real was infinitely better. The weeks that followed established a routine that felt both foreign and completely natural. Danny spent his days learning about Draconid culture, exploring the vast ancestral complex, and most importantly, watching the hatchlings grow. They developed rapidly, their personalities becoming more defined with each passing day. Pip, the cautious one, showed an aptitude for strategy and problem-solving. Thraxel began teaching the youngest hatchling basic tactical concepts using games and puzzles. Danny watched in amazement as Pip learned to think several moves ahead, anticipating outcomes with surprising accuracy. Stryker, bold and adventurous, wanted to explore everything. The middle child was constantly getting into trouble, climbing things it shouldn't, investigating dangerous areas, testing boundaries with fearless determination. Kethra took personal responsibility for channeling that energy, teaching Stryker about calculated risks versus reckless behavior. Ember, gentle and affectionate, gravitated toward the spiritual aspects of Draconid culture. Kalara worked with the largest hatchling, teaching songs and meditation techniques that seemed impossible for something so young to grasp. Yet Ember absorbed every lesson, the glow in its scales becoming brighter and more controlled. Through all of it, the hatchlings sought out Danny constantly. They would interrupt their lessons to chirp for his attention. They refused to sleep unless he was nearby. When he inspected his new ship or handled administrative tasks related to his new status, at least one hatchling would insist on coming along. They have imprinted on you strongly, Kalara observed one afternoon as all three hatchlings napped in a pile on Danny's lap while he tried to read reports on a datapad. This is unusual even for broodkin relationships. Normally, parental bonds supersede all others at this age. Is that a problem? Danny asked, concerned he was somehow interfering with proper development. Not a problem. Simply interesting. It suggests they recognize something in you that resonates with their core nature. You represent safety and unconditional acceptance. That is incredibly powerful for developing minds. Danny stroked Ember's head gently. I just treat them like they matter, which is precisely why they love you. Kalara smiled. Many beings in positions of power, even parents, sometimes forget that the young are not possessions or projects. They are individuals deserving of respect and autonomy. You have never made that mistake. The new ship, which Danny had named the Guardian's Hope in honor of his unexpected role, was everything Thraxel had promised and more. It was sleek, fast, and equipped with technology Danny had only dreamed about. The engines could push faster than light speeds that would have torn his old ship apart. The defensive systems could repel attacks from military vessels. The living quarters were comfortable enough for extended journeys and large enough to accommodate Draconid passengers if necessary. Most importantly, it had a special section designed specifically for the hatchlings. Climate-controlled chambers, entertainment systems calibrated to their developing senses, and safety features that would keep them secure during any crisis. Thraxel had thought of everything. When they are old enough to travel with you, they will be comfortable, the war chief explained during Danny's inspection tour. And safe. That is non-negotiable. Danny stood in the hatchlings' quarters and felt emotion threaten to overwhelm him again. You designed this whole section just for them? For them and for any young beings who might need protection in the future. You have proven yourself capable of caring for those in need. This ship reflects that capability. Thraxel placed a hand on Danny's shoulder. Use it well, guardian brother. Make the galaxy a better place through your actions. 3 months after the initial reunion, Danny prepared for his first journey away from Draconid Prime. He had been offered a contract to survey a distant system for potential colony sites, work that would take several weeks. The pay was excellent, the job straightforward, and it was time to start living his new life. The hardest part was saying goodbye to the hatchlings. They understood he was leaving, and their distress was heartbreaking. All three clung to him, chirping plaintively, their eyes pleading for him to stay. Danny knelt on the landing platform, holding them close, trying to explain in words they couldn't yet fully understand. "I have to go do some work," he said softly, "but I'll come back. I promise I'll always come back." Pip nuzzled against his neck, tiny claws gripping his shirt. Stryker made unhappy, growling sounds, clearly prepared to stow away if given the chance. Ember simply pressed close, scales dimming with sadness. Kellara approached, her presence calming. "Children, your guardian brother speaks truth. He will return. This is not abandonment. This is the natural flow of life. He has responsibilities, just as you have lessons to learn. But the bond between you does not break with distance." She began to sing, a soft melody that seemed to resonate with something deep in the hatchling's nature. Slowly, reluctantly, they loosened their grip on Danny. Kellara gathered them into her arms, continuing her song, and their distress began to fade into acceptance. Thraxel stepped forward. "They will count the days until your return, as will we. Travel safely, guardian brother. Know that the might of the Crimson Brood watches over you." Danny boarded the Guardian's hope with a heavy heart, but also a sense of rightness. This was his life now. He would explore the galaxy, do his work, and always return to the family that had claimed him. The hatchlings would grow in his absence, learn new things, develop new skills, and he would be there to witness those changes, to support them, to remain the constant presence they needed. As his ship lifted off from Draconid Prime, Danny looked back at the platform where his family stood watching. 3 tiny figures squirmed in Kellara's arms, their chirps audible even through the ship's hull. He made a promise to himself in that moment. No matter where life took him, no matter what challenges arose, he would always return to them. Because that's what family did. The survey mission went smoothly, almost boringly so. Danny mapped a system, collected data, filed his reports, and completed the contract ahead of schedule. He found himself rushing through tasks, eager to finish so he could return home. Home. The word felt strange applied to a planet he'd only known for 3 months, to a species he'd barely understood a season ago. But it was accurate. Draconid Prime had become home in ways Earth never had. Throughout the journey, Danny received regular updates from Kellara. The hatchlings were progressing well in their studies. Pip had solved a tactical problem that stumped adults. Stryker had managed to sneak into the armory and been found wearing armor 3 sizes too large. Ember had led a meditation session for younger clan members, guiding them with surprising wisdom. Each update came with images, and Danny could see how much they were growing. Their scales were brighter, their features more defined, their bodies larger and stronger. They were becoming who they would be, and missing even these few weeks felt like missing important chapters in a book. When Danny finally returned to Draconid Prime, he barely waited for the landing protocols to complete before rushing down the ramp. The hatchlings were there, bigger than he remembered, and they launched themselves at him with joyful chirps. He caught them, staggered under their increased weight, and laughed as they climbed all over him. "You grew!" he exclaimed, examining each one carefully. They had indeed grown, nearly doubling in size. They were no longer tiny enough to all fit in his arms at once, but they tried anyway, creating a chaotic pile of scales and claws and pure happiness. Kellara watched with obvious amusement. "They have counted every day of your absence. When the sensors detected your ship, they refused to be kept inside. Welcome home, guardian brother." "It's good to be home," Danny replied, and meant it with every fiber of his being. The pattern repeated over the following months. Danny would take contracts, travel the galaxy, experience adventures and challenges that would have been impossible in his old life, but he always returned to Draconid Prime, always reunited with the growing hatchlings, always slipped back into the role of guardian brother with ease. The hatchlings changed with each visit. They learned to speak, first in chirps and growls that Danny's implant could translate, then in actual Draconid language. They developed interests and preferences. Pip became fascinated with engineering. Stryker discovered a passion for combat training. Ember devoted themselves to mastering spiritual practices. But despite their growth and changing interests, one thing remained constant. Their love for Danny never wavered. He was guardian brother, the one who had saved them, the one who always came back. That bond transcended everything else. On his 10th return visit, nearly a year after first finding them, Danny discovered the hatchlings had prepared a surprise. They led him to a section of the ancestral complex he'd never seen before, chattering excitedly in their developing voices. "Close eyes," Stryker demanded in halting English. "No peeking," Danny obliged, letting them guide him carefully through corridors. When they finally told him to look, he found himself in a room that had been decorated entirely for him, human furniture sized to his proportions, pictures and mementos from his travels, even some salvaged items from his old ship, arranged like treasured artifacts. "We made Guardian Brother Space," Pip explained proudly. "So you always have home here." Ember pressed against Danny's side, purring. "You gave us family. We give you belonging." Danny felt tears stream down his face, not bothering to hide them. These children, these remarkable beings who had come into his life by accident, had given him everything he'd ever wanted without knowing to want it. They had made him family in the truest sense of the word. "Thank you," he managed to say. "This is perfect." Stryker climbed onto his shoulder, a feat that would have been impossible months ago given the hatchling's increased size. "You stay longer this time? As long as I can," Danny promised. And he did. He extended his stay, taking time to simply be present with them. He watched Pip's engineering experiments, attended Stryker's combat demonstrations, participated in Ember's meditation sessions. He shared meals with Thraxel and Kellara, discussing everything from politics to philosophy. He trained with the Red Dragon Pack, learning combat techniques that helped him survive increasingly dangerous salvage operations. Most importantly, he was there, present, engaged, part of the family in every meaningful way. Time passed, and the hatchlings grew from children into adolescents. They were formidable now, each standing nearly 6 feet tall with scales that gleamed like polished gemstones. Their personalities had fully developed, shaped by both Draconid tradition and the influence of their guardian brother. Pip had become a brilliant tactician and engineer, often called upon to solve complex problems for the clan. The youngest child's careful, thoughtful nature made them invaluable for planning and logistics. Stryker had earned the right to join the Red Dragon Pack, becoming the youngest warrior in the unit's history. The middle child's fearless courage and tactical creativity impressed even hardened veterans. Ember had been recognized as having high spiritual potential, working directly with Kellara on matters of faith and tradition. The largest child's gentle wisdom belied their young age. Through all their achievements, they remained devoted to Danny. He was at every important ceremony, every milestone, every triumph, and when they faced failures or setbacks, he was there for those too, offering support without judgment. On the day of their official coming-of-age ceremony, when they would be recognized as full adults in Draconid society, Danny stood with Thraxel and Kellara as the 3 young dragons recited their oaths and accepted their responsibilities. He felt pride swell in his chest, overwhelming and pure. After the ceremony, as celebrations erupted throughout the city, Pip approached Danny with a serious expression. "Guardian brother, we have request." "Anything," Danny replied automatically. Stryker and Ember flanked their sibling, presenting a united front. "We wish to travel with you," Stryker said, "to see galaxy through your eyes, to understand your world as you have understood ours." Ember added softly, "We are grown now. It is time to explore beyond homeworld, and we wish to do it with you." Danny looked at Thraxel and Kellara, seeking permission. The parents exchanged glances, then Thraxel nodded. "We have known this day would come. They are adults now, free to choose their path. If they wish to travel with their guardian brother, we will not object." Kellara smiled through obvious sadness at seeing her children leave. "They will learn much from you, and you will keep them safe, as you always have." Danny turned back to the three young dragons who had changed his life so completely. Then pack your things. The Guardian's Hope has plenty of room. It was designed for this from the beginning. They erupted into excited chatter, their joy infectious. Danny watched them rush off to prepare, and felt the weight of new responsibility settle on his shoulders. They were grown, yes, but still young, still learning, still needing guidance. But that's what he'd signed up for the moment he decided not to leave three scared hatchlings alone in an abandoned station. He was Guardian Brother. This was his purpose. As stars filled the sky above Draconid Prime and celebrations continued around them, Danny stood with Thraxel and Kellarara and looked toward the future. "Thank you for trusting me with them," he said quietly. "Thank you for being worthy of that trust," Thraxel replied. Kellara took Danny's hand in hers. "The Red Dragon Pack came for blood that day they found you. They came expecting to fight, to reclaim what was stolen through violence if necessary. Instead, they found their hatchling sleeping peacefully on a human's chest, safe and loved and whole. You transformed what could have been tragedy into triumph. You will always have our gratitude and our love." Danny squeezed her hand gently. "They gave me a family. That's worth more than all the treasure in the galaxy." "Then we are all blessed," Kellara said. "For you have gained a family, and we have gained a guardian brother, who proves that goodness transcends all boundaries." The next morning, Danny and the three young dragons boarded the Guardian's Hope together. As the ship lifted off from Draconid Prime, Danny looked at his companions, his family, his responsibility, and felt complete in a way he'd never experienced before. "Where to first?" Pip asked from the navigation console, Claws already working the controls with practiced ease. "Anywhere, Danny. Everywhere. We have time to see it all." Stryker checked weapon systems, ensuring everything was functioning properly, as long as there was adventure. Ember settled into the meditation chamber that had been prepared specifically for them, beginning the travel blessing that would protect them on their journey. The glow from their scales filled the ship with warm light. As the Guardian's Hope accelerated toward the stars, Danny Carter, once a simple salvager, now guardian brother to the Crimson Brood, smiled. His life had become complicated beyond imagination, but it had also become meaningful beyond measure. The Red Dragon Pack had come for blood and found sleeping hatchlings instead. In that moment, everything changed. And Danny wouldn't have it any other way.